We
Yes,
have
it did.
nobody who's joined us yet, but that's great because it means the two of us get to chat. Uh,
Yes.
uh, so, welcome everyone to Accomplices for Justice. If you can imagine, this is episode 15. That is 1-5. Uh, and I am Jonathan Freirish, rabbi here in Buffalo, and we are joined, as always, by my partner, my accomplice in the doing the deed of hopefully anti-racism together. However, whatever we mean by anti-racism, which is a whole nother question. So,
Yes.
Reverend Dr. Wiley Hughes, who is the senior pastor at Orchard Park Presbyterian Church in what could only be called one of the whiter suburbs of the metropole of Buffalo. So
Yeah.
today, we are tackling issues raised by this book, Minority Rule, The Right-Wing Attack on the Will of the People and the Fight to Resist It by Ari Berman. It is relatively new. It came out just this spring, and it is very, very relevant to what's going on in our lives right now. We You can find a whole bunch of resources on this book in particular in some interesting places. So, one of which is if you are a podcast person, there are two podcasts I would recommend. One really goes into the book at length because it's an interview with Ari Berman, and it's Amicus, which is one of my favorite podcasts, and the one from September 7th.
Mm.
And looking, and even a short, quick look at how this is having implications today in all sorts of ways is there's a podcast called What a Day, and
Day.
yesterday's podcast is on the major stakes of state Supreme Court races, which is right in the center of this. So uh, I'm going to raise a couple of the issues from the book, and then we'll get Pastor Hughes to comment because I'm sure he has. I'm quite confident that Pastor Hughes has a ton to say on these issues. So let's talk about American democracy. Uh,
Pull up a chair, pour a dram. This is going to be a good one.
So we have this illusion that American democracy, representative democracy, now we actually have Republican candidates regularly saying that democracy is not what America is about.
Right.
They are explicitly saying that this is not about people getting to vote and determine things.
Mm.
So let's define some terms. When the founders of this country chose representative democracy, what they were saying was unlike this idealized ancient Athenian democracy where a small group of elite citizens voted on everything, regardless of who they were impacting,
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
would we were going to have representative bodies, meaning we were going to have representatives elected at large in some way,
Hmm.
shape, or form, and in those bodies, the business of the country, the government, would take place.
Hmm.
And those representatives would be accountable to the people who elected them. Now, they never really were interested. Okay, they compromised over the question of who gets to vote and whose votes count.
Literally
So,
compromise.
well, I think Ari Berman points out that really what they did is they caved to minority interests.
Yes.
To the
Yes.
So it wasn't really a compromise. There was coercion involved, and the majority voices, in order to include people like Delaware and people who owned slaves and slavers,
Mm.
in order to include those people, at multiple times they sacrificed on democratic values. Now, where are those democratic values sacrificed in the fabric of our country?
Mm.
The Senate. We have a House of Representatives, which is theoretically elected by the people and distributed in a way that comes as close as possible to one person, one vote, ending up in the House of Representatives, albeit it's not really because of gerrymandering, but that's a whole other topic. And um, oh, do we need to send a new link for other viewers?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. This is we are getting people coming in. Excellent. So Charlotte Tay is arriving. I will put a new link out. I apologize to people if I messed up the link. Um, Hold on one moment.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, 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 please. We want people to be able to get in.
Yes, we do.
Uh,
And if while you're doing that, if I may interject a little
Go,
bit,
go, go.
just to get off on a little tangent, it wasn't until I got to college that I learned that, you know, what we call democracy in America, it is not really a true democracy. It is a republic. A true democracy is literally one vote, one person, one vote. Okay, but that's not how we operate in America anyway. So when we talk about democracy, even from the outset,
One of
we're
which is
not really talking about a true democracy.
recommend.
You know,
One really goes into. Sorry about that.
it's all right. A true democracy.
One really goes into. Sorry
Oh,
about that.
she said the Facebook link works, but the Zoom link didn't. Yeah, I had a similar problem. So we
All
have
right.
to, yeah. So we had to be clear about that when we're talking about a democracy. It was not really a democracy. It's more of a republic, more of a representative form of government, which does not uh, um, recognize one person, one vote, even though we talk about that a lot. And that was always confusing for me. We talk about every person has the right to vote, but if every vote is not, it's not, it's kind of counted, but not counted, then is this more politics? Is this trickery? Is this what is this? What are we dealing with it? I use the Malcolm X word there, politics,
I love it.
because it is tricky. It's tricky. One person, one vote, but not really. We talk about it a lot, but we don't really practice that, right?
Yes, we don't. And so,
Yes, we don't.
so here's the problem on the one person, one vote question, right? So historically, obviously, talking about enslaved peoples, were counted for other people's votes. So not only did they not get to vote, their votes counted so that if I were an owner of enslaved people, an enslaver, I got to vote for on their behalf without any accountability.
Exactly.
And furthermore, let the representation question seems complicated, but it's not. The number of Congress people in the House of Representatives is apportioned by population.
Hmm.
That meant that Virginia, which was already one of the biggest states, then got 60% more population counted on account of all of the enslaved
All the
people in
enslaved
that state
people. Hmm.
who didn't get to vote.
Hmm.
So that meant one voter who wasn't even an owner of slaves had more say in the House of Representatives and more say in the Senate in Virginia than in any other state. Oh, am I going to send a new link to Sally and Allison and Barb and Nanette and others? Nanette's not coming today. I will send a new link to Sally and Allison and Barb. Um, so this is a really big problem
Hmm.
because what we've ended up with is instead of a representative democracy, we have different people in different places have different proportionality of votes.
Right.
So a person living in New York City has a less important, less impactful vote than a person living in Wyoming.
Hmm.
Furthermore, let's not even talk about a person living in Washington, D.C. or Puerto Rico,
Hmm.
where they don't even have any representation
Hmm.
in the Senate.
Right.
So these are huge problems, structural problems in democracy. So this is what Ari Berman would call on the front end,
Hmm.
right? These are legislative problems about whose votes count.
Hmm.
Then, of course, we have, or they're on the back end, they're in the structure of things. On the front end, we now face whether or not we are encouraging or allowing people or getting people to vote at all,
Right.
which is also hugely problematic
Yeah.
because uh, what's that about? And it's
I mean,
crazy.
it is crazy. I mean, again, Malcolm X is my my inspiration. And he talked about that in his sermon, the ballot or the bullet. He talked about this. He talked about the disparity. He talked about the, yeah, okay, it's it is a hallmark of our country, of our body politic, that everyone be engaged in the political process. He says, but but there should be a good end to that engagement. If I engage in the political process, it should be of a benefit to me, right? It should be the encouragement for me to vote, because my vote matters, my vote counts, and my voice is a voice that will lead to things changing or being bettered in, for my community. But that's not happening in certain pockets of our country. That has never happened in certain pockets of our country. So then the question is, why should I vote? Why should I even take part in the political process if the political process has in no way, shape, or form benefited me or people like me? And this is what Malcolm X said. He was like, yeah, okay, you go out, you vote, but does your vote really count toward you, or does it count towards somebody else? And he posed that question in 1963.
Right. Well,
And here we are,
in 1963, we are in the middle of what we would call, or the beginning of the Second
the
Reconstruction,
second Reconstruction, right? That's
an attempt to correct all of that.
right.
So
And we're
here
still having the same issue today.
well, today we have an even bigger problem,
Right.
which is now we have, and Ari Berman does a great listing of all of the organizations that are in fact against everybody participating in the vote, that are named
Mhm.
usually with freedom in their name.
Yeah, there you go. Liberty.
So, right, freedom and liberty to have certain people not vote.
Right.
And what does that look like? That looks like the state of Wisconsin as Exhibit A, or the state of Georgia as Exhibit B.
Hmm.
In the state of Wisconsin, what we have seen is a significant amount of uh, not just gerrymandering, but the Senate the House of the legislature in Wisconsin disempowering the governor
Mm.
when a governor of the opposite party is elected. This happened in
Hmm.
North Carolina as well.
Hmm.
And then disempowering the referendum.
Yeah.
So ballot initiatives are hugely powerful in a number of states, and in Wisconsin, they undid them,
Mm.
which is really astounding.
Right.
Uh, so what we are in this terrible situation where in Wisconsin, in the last electoral cycle, the only thing that prevented the entire state from being under eternal Republican control was the election of one Supreme Court justice.
Mm.
That made lots of headlines in 2023. It was a huge deal.
Hmm.
And what do we see in that? We see that democracy is hanging by a thread in certain places.
Right.
And this is a huge issue.
Hmm. We're just going back. We're going back. We're rolling back all of the progress of the last 150 years. We're going back because now it's states' rights. This is hey, we're a state and the union. We have the right to do these things. They don't want any kind of federal legislation, any kind of federal prohibition, any kind of federal mandate that that would maintain democracy. Everybody wants their own little fiefdom so that they can do what they want to do, without federal interdiction. So it's a big problem.
It is a big problem. So here's the question. And we're just beginning to lay out the problem. Here we are. We're in New York State. What can we do? First of all, does this problem affect us as New Yorkers? We like to think that, in New York, everybody's fine, right? Because we're a majority Democratic state. The
Mm.
Democratic Party is for all of these things. So aren't we fine in New York?
Right. No.
Why not? Why aren't we fine in New York?
Where do we start?
Please,
Well,
let's start.
yeah, let's start. Where do we begin? Where do we begin? As we talked about before, yeah, we talk about New York being a mostly Democratic state, but as I said, the Democrats only populate the urban areas in the state. So the metropolitan areas around the major cities, Buffalo, maybe a little bit Rochester, some in Syracuse, New York City, of course. But then the rest of the state is very, 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 very Republican. And a lot of times it's the politics in those areas that go unchecked, you know and we we don't pay any attention to them, or we just we cater to them sometimes. I guess it's almost as if some of our politicians hide behind bipartisanship, which it's not bipartisanship, it's just gerrymandering by another name, and it does the same damage to democracy as Republican gerrymandering, so we're both doing it.
We are, in fact, both doing it. So there is incredible gerrymandering here in New York State. The gerrymandering has been so bad on the behalf of the Democratic Party that the map had to be challenged multiple times.
Mm.
Uh, here in Buffalo, our Senate map got changed just weeks before the Democratic primary
Yep.
the year before last,
Yep.
uh, because the gerrymandering was so bad. So here's the question: how do we go about demanding from our elected leaders a better way of going about this? You know, how do judges get elected? Where do they serve? Nobody knows this, and it turns out it's hugely impactful
Yeah.
on our society.
Yeah, it's our own ignorance, right? Again, and I'm quoting Malcolm X again in the early 1960s. He said, "You guys, we focus so much on presidential elections. Everybody knows how a president is elected. We all know about the Electoral College. We know all about the process of voting for the president, but we pay no attention to local politics. We pay no attention to court magistrates. We pay no attention to how city council. We pay no attention to these things, and this is where the problem begins. It begins with Supreme Court justices. It begins with mayors. It begins with police chiefs. It begins there, right? And so we don't give them the same amount of attention that we give to a presidential election. And he would argue, and I would agree, that we are more heavily impacted by local politics than we are national politics, because the president has limited power. The president is not a dictator. And so the president has to worry about the entire country. And, unfortunately, we look up to our president to handle our little problems, right? Instead
Right,
of,
which is, so we run into this disappointment problem on that
yes,
regard,
then we get upset about it, right? Oh, he didn't
right?
do for
So
me what I thought he was going to do for me.
for those of us who thought, Obama was going to change everything for everybody, turns out that wasn't possible.
That's
Turns out,
possible.
turns out midterm elections count.
Yes.
Turns out state elections count.
Yes. And
Turns
it's
out the
already
cen-
too late, right?
turns out the census counts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So our inattention to the census here in New York led to our population being undercounted in the
Yep.
2020 census, which led to New York losing seats in the House of Representatives.
Yep. Same thing happened in Georgia. Stacey Abrams, well, it was the reverse happened in Georgia. Stacey Abrams she understood the assignment. She did exactly what you said. She went and she got the census updated. She went grassroots organizing, and she flipped the state. She flipped the state. Unfortunately, she didn't win the governor, but she ended up flipping the state because she knew that the power was in the local government, not the national. So, and now we see the fallout from that, right? We see the response from the Republicans. They're scrambling, trying to rescue Georgia. Uh, you know, that gerrymandering again
Right. Rescue Georgia from majority rule.
from majority rule.
Right. I mean, because that's our theme here. Our
Right.
theme here is what do we do about minority rule. And again, Ari Berman starts the story of this, yes, with the founding, but the recent story starts with Pat Buchanan. Everybody remember Pat
Remember
Buchanan?
Pat Buchanan.
So uh, Gwen Ifill, Gwen and Sherilyn Ifill were having a conversation in 2016. I think it was Gwen Ifill who was talking with actually I think with Dara Lithwick um, on on Amicus or behind the scenes, and they said that the issue that they were facing that they felt was going to determine the 2016 election was 2042.
Mm,
And what was 2042? 2042 was the then estimate about when the United States became majority minority.
majority minority. Exactly.
And that was the Pat Buchanan question in the 90s.
Hmm.
Only his date was 2050 or
Exactly.
2060 because the
Yep.
date keeps on getting closer because we keep.
Exactly. It's accelerating every year, right?
And by the way, the even the terrible results of the 2020 census could not hide the fact that non-white people are continuing to grow in proportion of the American electorate.
Yep.
So in all of these things, our issue is white fear
Hmm.
over what a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy might actually look like.
And let's be honest, when we say multiracial, we just mean non-white. And that's something that I heard from another podcast. I can't remember the name of the person saying it, but they said that. They said that this is a fear of white annihilation, of just completely being eradicated. And that's the base of that fear.
Right. And by the way, my little personal footnote to this entire conversation, which might be an interesting one for us to have at another point, is why Jewish people don't count as diverse.
That is a good question. That's a good question.
So, anti-Semitism does not make it into the DEI conversation.
Right.
Anti-Semit, Jewish advocacy, it doesn't count. Me getting hired does not. I am not a DEI hire.
Mm,
and and Jewish people are not counted when people say we want a more diverse uh,
mm,
company or a diverse
mm.
representation. We don't deserve representation.
That's a good topic for another discussion.
But that being
Excellent.
said, that being said, uh, the goal of representation is the goal of diversity, not
Hmm.
the goal of nullification or eradication.
Right.
And when people are worried, I and I think at the heart of this, listen to what people say they are worried about and understand that usually that is what they are doing. I need to repeat that again.
Yes, you do.
Listen to what people say they are afraid of and understand that that is a method that they are using.
Hmm.
So when a politician gets up and says they are taking away your vote, that is in fact what they are doing.
Yes.
The person, right? It is like kindergarten, the one who smelt it dealt it.
Yeah. Yep.
It is no more sophisticated than that. So the person who is meant to who has claims to go to Washington to clean up the swamp brings the swamp with them.
Yep.
The person who claims to make sure that I mean, this is a person who shall remain nameless. I feel like I'm talking about Voldemort, right? Who publicly said he advocates for the firing of striking workers
Hmm.
and then goes out and says he is pro-labor.
Yes. Yes.
So we are dealing with, and this is, such a lack of transparency about the meaning of our words and what we say. And this is a left and right issue. It is not just, it is easy to point out the people who appear to be villains on the right, but it is just, we need to not fall asleep on the people on the left who are doing us harm as well.
Hmm.
People in power want to stay in power. Democracy threatens that.
Yep.
Uh, oh, somebody posted Was that you? No.
That was me. That was me. It's my favorite cartoon.
Uh, what is this? Careful, mate. That foreigner wants your cookie. Yes.
Yes. And he has the whole plate of cookies, and he's only giving the worker one cookie, but he's
Correct.
telling him to look at the foreigner who's taking his cookie.
And where is Rupert Murdoch from?
That's a good question. Where's Rupert Murdoch from? Not America.
He's Australian.
He's Australian, right? Right.
Uh, so here here we get into the heart of the matter is just because we've elected a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature, we are not finished.
No.
And this, I think I think we really need to remind ourselves over and over again, if we want progress in this country, we need to continue to work for it.
Yes.
And that the things that are getting in the way of us working for it are there on purpose.
Yes.
When we work too long to take care of our kids and advocate for them, that is a structural problem. And it's a structural problem affecting everyone because it means we're also working too long to consume real news or demand it.
Hmm. Hmm.
When we when our housing costs so much that we need to work so long, that
Yeah.
is a structural problem.
Yeah, it is by design. It is an opiate of the masses. I know they talk about religion as the opiate of the masses, but there's more opiates than just religion. That work week, the 40-hour work week is an opiate because we're working too hard to notice. We're working too hard to be involved. We're working too hard to care. We're working too hard. And that's by design, right? That's
It
by
is
design.
It is by design because it means that those who use fear as a tool um, don't have their arguments evaluated.
That's right.
And and let's be clear, Vice President Harris is vague about some of her policies,
Very vague. And vague about the policies that matter most is what I find very disappointing.
and yet we excuse it not unreasonably because we understand that the presidential election is almost never decided on policy issues.
Right.
It is an emotional vote.
It is an emotional vote,
And
which should give us pause. It really should, it should give us pause, right? Like, policy, who cares? I like her or I like him. Like what's that have to do with anything, right?
remember it was not so long ago that the question was, would I sit down for a beer with the
Yes.
presidential candidate?
Yes. And Joe the plumber, right?
Yes.
I like that look you gave. Like, oh my God. Yeah, it was the big thing. Joe the plumber.
And what is it to be a person of the people?
Mm. Well,
Uh,
which people are we talking about, right?
so we elect representatives, and we hope they're supposed to represent us. Sometimes we elect them moderately democratically, regardless of gerrymandering. Sometimes we are prevented. I think anybody who wants to see just how terrible the gerrymandering and the anti-democratic principles go to, uh, read Ari Berman's book, but really look at what's happened in Wisconsin
Mm.
and look at how Governor Tony Evers had almost no power to do anything for so long,
Hmm.
despite being elected governor, because when he was elected, the lame duck Senate and House on the way out
Yes.
took away gubernatorial powers.
Hmm.
Uh, Similarly, one doesn't need to go back that far to see that Mitch McConnell prevented President Obama from appointing justices, not just to the Supreme Court, but to every level of federal
And he
courts.
used every political tool to do it, like every political filibustering. I mean, he used every tool to do that. And then, of course, when Obama's term was over and Trump took over, then he wanted to roll it back. It's like, no, 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 no.
No, there is no, right? We are involved in part of our problem is that we're attempting to have a good faith conversation with people who
You
are
don't
not
have good faith.
involved.
Exactly. Right.
we are attempting to follow rules with people who don't care about the rules,
That's correct. That is
right?
correct.
The only rule is power.
That's correct.
Whether or not we can counter that will require us to be involved.
Well, it will require us to take our power, to take back our power and to use our power, if we have any.
Well, and we do.
Yes.
I mean, at this point, we need to be making sure that the Democratic Party assures votes in places where the vote is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Not merely making sure that people can show up and vote again on the front end, but on the back end,
Yeah.
that state legislatures are not going to stand in the way of the votes being counted and verified.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
we need to be vigilant, and we need to, I think almost everybody on the call at the moment remembers the 2000 election.
Mm.
So in the 2000 election, we hoped it was going to be finished on election night, and it wasn't finished for months. And the people who finished it were the Supreme Court.
Yep.
Stopped the vote count in Florida.
Yep.
However, that vote count in Florida was made worse by the willingness of GOP lawyers to
Hmm.
go in without scruples and attempt to interrupt the vote count at every level.
Yep. Pause it, stop it, delay it, everything.
And this willingness to throw out any sense of rules for the sake of power, this willingness to have one's friends make the decision that is meant to be one done by popular election.
Yeah.
And really our question becomes, how do we emulate what has happened in Michigan to guarantee rights to vote, what has happened in Wisconsin as they have begun to take back the right to vote, what happens in Georgia when we have seen the Georgia legislature over and over and over again make not only voting harder, but making the counting of the vote subject to the will of a minority.
Exactly. Exactly. Marianne Williamson said in an interview, I can't remember where the interview was, but she said in the interview is that these are all symptoms of a dying republic, where the shift of the populace is is making it increasingly more difficult for the people in power to stay in power, because the consciousness is changing. The consciousness of the people is shifting. And so what we're seeing now over the last 15, 20 years is the people in power retreating, right? They're retreating, and they're trying to grab at whatever power that they have to keep it. Because the people are changing, the people are shifting, the people are becoming a little bit more aware than what we were before. And so we're not taking some of this stuff. And as a response, instead of making things fair and following the rules and just saying, okay, well, the rules say this, let's do it, they're breaking those rules. Those rules have become sacrificed on the altar of status quo.
So,
And
yes, and those rules were always sacrificable.
always.
That, we've studied the history of Reconstruction and seen the degree to which, when the rules didn't work for the sake of the white minority in states like Mississippi and Alabama and
Hmm.
Georgia and North Carolina,
Hmm.
then they resorted to violence.
Yeah, this is sort of the violence.
And to this day, we have right now an argument going on who is inciting violence,
Yes.
right? The vice presidential candidate for the Republican Party is claiming that somehow or another the president and the vice president at this moment are inciting violence against right-wing leaders,
Right.
and without any regard to the language of the lead candidate of the Republican presidential candidate, who has
Right.
advocated violence and demonization of opponents for the last 9 years,
Exactly. Exactly.
uh, who has called who has said that electing Vice President Harris to the presidency would be the end of American democracy.
and has said that and has doubled down on that.
So, what do we do about all this? Because we're going to open this up to discussion with everybody because we have some really smart people involved on the call with us who all have suggestions. And what I love about our participants in Accomplices for Justice is they really are accomplices. They support us. We are thrilled that you are involved. By the way, your support has let us. We hit 500 downloads for our podcast this week, so that's exciting. So people are in fact getting involved.
Thank you. Thank you.
Truly, thank you. My apologies for sending out a poor link via the email, but if you'd like to get our emails, please subscribe at opendoorjudaism.org. That's opendoorjudaism.org. You can subscribe. You can make a donation, which would be great. You can find our Accomplices for Justice is on Patreon, and you can make donations there as well. But really, Pastor Hughes, what are we supposed to do about all this? How are we going to take back our democracy?
Well, Ari in the book talks a lot about grassroots mobilization with the intention to influence policy decisions. And I agree with that. But I think before or during this grassroots movement, we need to be better educated. I think when I speak personally, there's so much I don't know. There's so much I don't know about local politics. There's so much I don't know about the local political process that I would love to get on my soapbox. I would love to get a megahorn. I would love to demonstrate. I would love to protest, but I need to know what I'm protesting for. And I need to know how it works so that I know when and where to strike. You understand what I'm saying? There are a lot of organizations, especially in the Buffalo area, who are out there protesting, who are mobilizing, but they don't they don't it's like you have a focused laser, but it's on the wrong target because the landscape is changing and we're chasing the wave. They are 6 or 7 steps ahead of us. And so every time we figure out, okay, we got to attack this, we got to reduce the funding for prisons, they've already moved on to the next thing. And so we got to catch up. So we need to be a little bit more organized, a little bit more educated, so that we can be more effective with our efforts. Problem is people get burned out. And
So I have a suggestion.
mhm.
And you mentioned what Ari Berman mentioned. So here is an opening a story from page 277 in his book. On November 6th, 2018, Katie Fahey stepped to the podium at a ballroom in Detroit's Athenaeum Suite Hotel carrying a flute of champagne in each hand. Hey, Michigan, she told a crowd of jubilant supporters, we just amended the state constitution. Her group, Voters Not Politicians, had passed a landmark ballot initiative to end gerrymandering in one of the country's most gerrymandered states. The result and the events that led to it were altogether improbable. 2 years earlier, Fahey was a 27-year-old political novice from the Grand Rapids area who worked as a program manager for a recycling nonprofit. 2 days after the 2016 election, dismayed by Trump's 10,000 vote upset victory in Michigan and the GOP's stranglehold over state politics, she posted on Facebook before leaving for work, I'd like to take on gerrymandering in Michigan. If you're interested in doing this as well, please let me know. She added a smiley face emoji for a millennial touch. When she got to the office, she saw her post was going viral with likes and positive replies. So this is she Googled how do you end gerrymandering and visited the website Ballotpedia. So she rallied through that one Facebook post
Mm, right,
a movement that she now runs full time.
right.
So voters, not politicians. Let's start there.
I,
Let's start there in New York.
I like it.
Let's support them everywhere. Let's get involved. And
I'm all about it.
and and there are a number of ways to get involved. This is something that's not New York, but I think we need voters, not politicians in New York.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, I am also involved with local organizations like Ashley Watson's Real Talk, which does direct action with students. And it might be one of the ways we take on the education piece.
Mm.
Because, as you said, people don't know
Yeah.
on purpose.
Exactly. That's by design. It's by design that we don't know because the information is out there. I mean, literally, it's out there. I mean, it's on the government. It's on government website. You can go on there and you can learn all you need to know about the political process, but we just don't.
We don't. So maybe, we need to start a new online publication for the city of Buffalo about public policy.
I'm game.
And so these are things that we need to begin with, but let's start with voters, not politicians. And I want to invite all of our participants today to join us for this conversation. So I've given you the opportunity to unmute yourselves and start your video. Uh, and uh, apologies again for messing up the link, but I got it to some of you anyway. Nice to see you, Tay.
Well,
And
while they're unmuting, I'll say one thing.
please.
Well, the whole discussion, I'm very interested in all of it. It's, yes, a very important thing. One thing I'll mention just very quickly, because you might get a kick out of it. I don't know if you've ever heard of George O'Connor. He's the author of graphic novels, graphic, not technically novels. They're nonfiction. But anyway, he and another guy, wait a minute, let me look up. I had it up here on so I could share it with you. I just have to look quickly what the other guy's name is. Hold on. Recents. There we go. All right. The other guy's name. Oh, it's called Unrig: How to Fix Our Broken Democracy. And it is a graphic nonfiction novel by Daniel G. Newman and George O'Connor, and quite fascinating. And one of the things they talk about, for example, has to do with the tremendous influence of big money. Well, that's what the cookie thing was all about, I guess. That and the whole influence of those things. The groups, the PAC groups. I'm being encouraged to work to get rid of Citizens United. So these giant PACs can't just have millions of dollars to contribute to one candidate. What does my $25 or $50 or whatever matter at that point? He talks about that in some, well, I think it's the Seattle area, only for local elections, but it's quite interesting. It's limited to every voter has $100 that they get from their city government or maybe county government anyway, and they can split it into 4 $25 things, and that are the only contributions that any of the non-national candidates can get. I'm not sure about the statewide, but anyway, the local, I thought, wow, that would be an interesting thing. So there's that. Way too much influence of big money. But also the whole electoral college thing, I wish that would go. And yes, I live just south of Buffalo in a gerrymandered district that I know a Democrat is not going to win. And by the way, while you might be interested in, or you may be connected with Connor Flynn in Orchard Park.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm aware of him. We've written him letters.
Oh, okay. In the Orchard Park Dems. I
Yes.
campaigned for him when he was running for the town board, and
Yes.
actually was the only Democrat on it. And now he runs the Orchard Park Dems.
Right.
But yeah, his wife was a student of mine at one stage. So of course I campaigned for him. But he has a fascinating background. Biology and then law school. Okay. Anyway. But he might be a guy to work with on local issues. I wish we could get rid of the gerrymandering, though, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know how. I mean, both parties do it when they can.
Yes. And like we were saying earlier, it's damaging to the people suffer. When both parties are doing it, we're the ones that suffer,
Right.
So the happy ending to the Michigan story is what Voters Not Politicians did in Michigan is they appointed a nonpartisan panel to do redistricting. So
okay.
Good.
Which, I mean, it's astounding what the panel is. I will because so they had all sorts of things that they needed to get rid of, like emergency managers and all the other things. So because Michigan Republicans had drawn the legislative map so badly that
Yeah.
they took over cities,
Mm.
disempowered mayors, and created emergency managers, so that you had a Republican state legislature appointing unelected people to run cities, which is how you ended up with the Flint, Michigan problem.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So their legislative map, they created when they got. I'm trying to remember what they did. They got 60% of voters to approve a new ballot initiative to expand voting access, but this is post gerrymandering, and their solution was really this whole nonpartisan unelected group with random selections of people who got onto the committee to do redistricting. So
Mhm.
they had a pool of people, some of whom who were selected by random. You had 5
Wow.
Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 5 independents
Wow.
who were selected from this pool of people, and they ended up with all sorts of different people who you would never expect
Mhm.
in a redistricting. And
Wow.
they did the research, right? They did the political science behind it, because gerrymandering is a science,
Yeah.
and now it can be done with, I mean, infinitesimal, dare I say, quantum precision. So house by house in neighborhoods,
Yep.
and none of which is to the advantage of democracy.
Right.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Rabbi Jonathan.
Good to see you. You have a
Hi,
thought on
Reverend
this,
Hughes.
on
Yeah,
democracy
I
in
was
America?
just thinking when you're talking about this thing, uh, usually, maybe always, the narrative controls the outcome. Okay. And the narrative that Trump and boys like him are pushing is this, is that we want to keep the low people enslaved, and we'll give you a little bit of the American dream money.
Mm.
You can trust us, even though the tax cuts are bigger for us. You can trust us, but you can't trust them. And they're a them.
Mhm. Mm.
And I think our biggest ally in this presidential election is Trump with the crazy stuff about they're going to get your cats and dogs and all that stuff. He's just crazier and crazier. And finally, we have a candidate that points out how crazy he is, and it doesn't get involved in it. We had a bunch of Republicans running against Trump when he first started, and they were just intimidated by names like Little Marco, things like that. But I see in my Republican circle people saying, I'm not going to vote for him.
Mhm.
And it's not, and I've said a few things which probably helped over the years, but what's helped more than anything is the rhetoric is just getting crazier and crazier. If you listen to JD Vance, he says it may not be true, but we're going to say it anyway.
We're gonna say it anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. But they realize that there's a, a hatred for anything that's different in this country.
Mhm.
And people don't want to realize that their situation, our situation, every one of our situations mostly is caused by our actions. It's
Mm.
not caused by them. It's not caused by them. And they have sold this narrative. If you drive around the country, like you were saying, Wiley, you see these Trump signs.
Mhm.
And they have sold this narrative to non-thinking people that it's caused by the progressive democratic
Yes.
minority thinking. And it hasn't been. That's a lie. It's a big
Right.
lie. You know, it's a big lie. And we have to, and I try in my everyday life, um, because I'm involved with a lot of Republicans who are really good friends. We have some pretty good discussions, and it's been good. It's been good. I try not to say anything too crazy, but at the same time, bring up the inconsistencies in
Yeah.
the other side, and they actually have been thinking a little bit. But
Mm,
we've got to get that narrative back to more normal than what it is. The
right.
narrative now is I'm going to hate. It's those guys' faults. It's the Democrats' faults. It's the minorities' faults. So I'm going to hate him, and I'm going to vote for this idiot from New York City, no
Mm,
matter
So,
what he says.
so I have a, Chuck, you're amazingly well situated for this uh, opportunity for narrative change. You have trusted relationships. Um, yeah, I put thanks, Tay. I put the link there already to the book. Excellent. Uh, so you know, Chuck has all of these trusting relationships with people who think differently.
hmm
And this is so first of all, we need to, be like Chuck. If you know someone out there who is dedicated to a particular ideology, use your trusting relationship first and foremost to listen, not to correct. Right? Because part of the issue is when we go in thinking we have the answer, we fail.
Fail every time.
So, Chuck raises the issues, encourages thinking. We need to be curious. We need to be interested, not interesting,
Mm,
and find out exactly what it is. I mean, I was making some phone calls, on behalf of the Harris campaign, and early on, and people were skeptical.
mm.
And I said, "So, what are you concerned about?" And they said, "Gas prices." I said, "Interesting. Gas prices now are no higher than they were when Biden came into office."
Yep.
Said, "I know it feels like there was a pinch, but there wasn't.
There was no pinch.
There was a rise in gas prices early on, in the later parts of the pandemic, and now it's back down to where it was." And then grocery prices. And I said, "Okay, I hear that." I said, "So here are these questions." I said, "What do we bring back to the campaign and say we need them to do something about?"
Hmm
And instead of saying, "No, no, no, you're wrong," because that's the problem, right? We end up in this place where we're accusing each other of being wrong.
Mm,
And and Pastor Hughes, our frustration about policy versus emotions.
hmm
Part of the issue is all of us feel unheard. So
Yep.
if my emotions are my emotions, if I feel like I'm paying too much money at the gas pump, then that's my feeling. I can't tell somebody, "Hey, you're wrong, you're not." I can say, "Hey, you know what? I feel that too." And I looked at it. And you know what? It's not actually that for me.
Right.
So I can compare feelings because before we get to the policy questions, we need to make common cause. And we make
hmm
common cause by saying your feelings are real. You
Mm,
count.
right.
Because again, what's this all about? It's about whether or not we count, whether or not the people are in fact counting our votes, whether or not we're able to vote, whether or not we count. And whether or not we count is an emotional and pragmatic thing.
hmm hmm
So go out and find your network like Chuck's. Go out and connect with the people who think differently. And we are going to try to do that. We are, Pastor Hughes and I are in working on figuring out how we get Orchard Park and Cold Spring
Yeah.
together.
It's a tough nut to crack, but we're trying.
And because we need to create common cause across populations. I was speaking with Nanette Massey, who's a regular here, and she couldn't be here today because she had another event.
Mm,
Nanette and I were talking about feelings of safety in the city of Buffalo, and I've spent a lot more time on the east side of Buffalo in the last couple of years than I had in the preceding years.
hmm
So certainly since May 14th, 2022, I've spent much more time on the east side of Buffalo. So in response to the terrible shooting at Tops.
mm,
And one of the things that's fascinating about the east side of Buffalo is I feel safer on the east side of Buffalo in most places than I do walking on Hurdle Avenue in front of bars where I know there are white supremacists.
Yeah.
And the emotional feeling of safety is one that we can take on intellectually.
Yes.
My thinking about why I am safe or not among different types of people is an emotional bias, a
Mm,
reaction to whatever I grew up with and my whatever sense I had, but I can take it on through the intellect
right.
and change the way I feel. So I can take on that bias by saying, you know what? In the city of Buffalo, I know the statistics, the crime statistics are much better for me as a white guy among African Americans than as
Hmm.
a Jewish guy among white people.
Right.
I am much less likely to face violence on Jefferson Avenue, which may or may not look as nice as Hurdle Avenue, depending upon your perspective.
Right.
And that's something that I can think my way through to feeling differently. And that, Chuck, is really what you're suggesting. How do we create sympathy, the feeling differently that allows us to think through things? Because the heart and mind are connected. And we can't ask people to ignore their hearts when we ask them to think differently. Welcome, John. Nice to see you.
Yeah, a bit late to say the least, but thank you.
So, John, you still live in North Carolina, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So I'm going to ask you for how does it feel in North Carolina with somebody running for governor who is on the less rational side of the spectrum? Let's play it that way.
Let's put it this way. I can't figure out how anybody can support him. Republican or Democrat. I mean, you just look at the policies and listen to what he says, and I have a hard time rationalizing that, even if, even talking to somebody that supports him to say, how did you get there? I have a hard time with trying to go through that and understanding what he's promoting.
Does it feel like, I mean, we have such a quick cycle of progress and backlash right now. Like it almost feels like it's no longer an electoral cycle backlash progress. It's like week to week,
Right.
right? That we are in the hoping we are making progress on the Haitian immigrant backlash in Springfield, Ohio right now, right? So here we have public figures publicly lying about a population in Springfield, Ohio, causing arson and 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 literally placing people's lives in danger because words have power and lies have power.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we have black men still being lynched, and no one's talking about it. What do we do about that? I mean, it's just, you know, how do we address that? How do we talk about that from a political standpoint? And then more to your point, you know, how do we keep our emotions, not do away with our emotions, but how do we keep our emotions in check enough to have a decent conversation? I mean, I understand you're saying that we have to be aware of people's emotions and how people feel. I'm very politically charged about lynching, but at the same time, my my I'm emotionally charged about lynching. But how will my emotions impact change? How can my emotions impact change? That's my
Well,
question.
and this is a much bigger question, I feel, for people who have been historically moment to moment wronged in our society. Because and this is so there's this question about how do I sympathize with people who are not like me? So one of the big deals, one of my big sympathies for, Pastor Hughes is walking around in a black person's body in this country is facing, um, as I said, moment to moment offense. And therefore, when something raises beyond the moment-to-moment offense, like somebody's getting lynched and no one's talking about it, being able to quiet one's soul enough to be able to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't even know any of it that's going on. But more importantly, as Pastor Hughes faces, the challenge that Pastor Hughes faces often is working for a community that feels like they've overcome racism because they hired him. And we need to congratulate the Orchard Park Presbyterian Church on the one hand for being so open-minded, and also understanding that that open-mindedness is the start of a process, not the end.
Right.
And what a challenge that is. And then how does Pastor Hughes, how do you do that? How do you quiet your soul in the face of moment-to-moment offense to be able to say, now I have to talk to this possibly overtly racist person about how they don't know how they're being racist, and they don't even know that black men are being lynched right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like what Chuck said, you have to surround yourself with people who are open. And that's sort of what I've managed to do, is surround myself with people who are more open to conversation. And it's just a conversation. And I do have to tamp down my emotions a lot. I have to censor the way I have to censor myself a lot. Not because I think what I say is not necessary or valuable, but because it's oftentimes the way things are said, it's tone, it's all this other nonverbal nonverbal stuff that I have to contend with just to get a point across, and to get a point across in a way that actually is helpful for the conversation. So it's tough.
So I want to offer gratitude and blessings for all of us who are here. I feel like that we are at the beginnings of a movement for change in this small Zoom room. And I want to offer the idea that it happens when a few of us say, hey, we need to do something. And that's all that it takes. I want to invite all of you back. We have 3 Wednesdays in October. So episodes 16, 17, and 18 are coming on. Pastor Hughes and I were already talking about what we're going to talk about next time. We didn't decide on it. So keep a lookout. I promise to get the right link out this time. I apologize for messing that up via the email. But I will correct that going forward. We will put the entire schedule out, both via email and also on the website, opendoorjudaism.org. That's opendoorjudaism, spelled normally, .org. Our past episodes and links to them are on there. I post the video to the newest one on there as well. I will post the calendar for all of October. Pastor Hughes and I will set up a time to sit over coffee and sketch out the whole thing. And of course, we so appreciate all of you who have made donations and keep the lights on, metaphorically speaking, or more importantly, my Zoom account current. And interestingly enough, I was because of the sensitive nature of our latest episodes, we haven't been able to advertise them on Facebook because Facebook wants me to verify myself, and I haven't been able to get the authorization yet. But whatever, who needs Facebook? But we are really appreciative to all of you. For those of you who know what's going on in the world right now, it's yet another difficult week to be Jewish as the Israeli military is blowing up Hezbollah terrorists with not just pagers, but also with walkie-talkies. And we mourn the loss of life among everyone, including, unfortunately, children were lost in that counterattack as war in the Middle East between Israelis and Palestinians, between Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran and Israel continues to worsen. We wish there were and pray for a world where everybody has a right to self-determination in a country that is safe for them all. Pastor Hughes, any closing words?
No. Love each other.
Love
That's
each other.
that's our
Uh,
that's our power. That's our superpower. Love each other
Do things with soul.
with soul. Yeah. Yeah.
Do things with soul. Thank you all. I look forward to seeing you all again soon, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Rabbi, thank you, Pastor.